Hello, my name is Paul Marchbanks, and this is Digging in the Dirt. Today I'll be saying a few words about the presence of children in storytelling, particularly the two central characters of Isao Takahata's Grave of the Fireflies. The earliest forms of storytelling rarely spotlight children. Kids occasionally function as set dressing, or their presence may provide the impetus for an adult's action, but they don't usually star in the tales where they appear. The death of Medea's kids at her own hands in Euripides' ancient play constitutes a horrifying act of revenge against the husband who has abandoned her for a younger woman. But we barely meet the children before their pleas for mercy, heard off stage, remove them from the plot altogether. Neither the dialogue nor the playwright's original stage directions tell us anything about their personalities or backgrounds. Unless a modern production's director provides the little ones with silent stage business to grant them individuality, they remain non-entities, ciphers, who exist only to die. In Iphigenia at Aulis, another play by the Greek playwright, the 14-year-old Iphigenia, who is fated to be sacrificed to appease an angry god, has just reached marrying age. Her child-woman status wins her a few more lines than those given to Medea's kids, but only enough to capture that affection which her beloved father will betray when he sacrifices her to Artemis in order to restore the winds needed to blow troop-stuffed Mycenaean ships towards the doomed city of Troy. Like Homer's famous narrative poems about the long battle and the storied journey that would follow that horrendous bit of infanticide, other countries' most famous epics sidestep children altogether, or mention a particular hero's youth only to rush past it. In the Western tradition, Virgil's Aeneas has at least 3 decades' experience under his belt when he escapes from Troy. Beowulf is already an adult when he fights Grendel. Roland has a fiancée when he sacrifices himself to save King Charlemagne at Roncesvalles. And the childhood of Siegfried, though apparently filled with youthful exploits, receives sparse attention in Chapter 2 of Germany's Nibelungenlied. No little ones play the protagonist in any of Chaucer's Canterbury Tales, Shakespeare's plays, or the many Arthurian legends generated in medieval Britain and France. Even those coming-of-age novels, or Bildungsroman, that began to proliferate in the late 18th century follow the lead of the earlier picaresque novel in giving short shrift to childhood in order to provide additional space for the juiciness of adolescence and the adult's tortured journey towards self-awareness. When children do take center stage, as in the sort of nursery rhymes, myths, and legends that began making their way into print in the 18th and 19th centuries, they often serve to heighten the anxiety of adult audiences worried about a vulnerable younger generation. A fictional child's distress reliably puts nannies and babysitters on edge as they imagine their own young charges getting lost and running into psychopaths while under their care. And tales about dramatic transformations alternately inspire hope and distress for the anxious parent who wonders whether their own maladjusted child will one day blossom like the lucky kids in fairy tales. Fear that children may never surmount the obstacles they face, or escape the traps laid for them by nefarious scoundrels, or worse, that they might actually mutate into monsters under stress they cannot avoid and lack the skill to confront, has spawned some rather appalling fictional scenarios. For every David Copperfield or Matilda in which a youngster manages to escape apathetic or actively abusive adults, there's a Flowers in the Attic, Silent Hill, or very distressing film like Gore Verbinski's adaptation of the Japanese Ringu. In Verbinski's The Ring from 2002, audiences confront a truly disconcerting bait and switch, with the story first convincing us that our central threat, a prepubescent girl, is acting out violently because she was mistreated by adults, only to flip the script in the close of the film. Do some children deserve to be separated from the rest of the world because at their core they're pure evil? It's hard to get one's mind around such a possibility, but The Ring does its best to convince us. Even if you don't accept this key presupposition, I guarantee the film will unsettle sensitive viewers in other rather lasting ways. If you'd rather not deal with nightmares following a film screening, however, there are plenty of other ways to consider the plight of the vulnerable. The survivors of the United States' devastating attack on Japan in 1945 provided a particularly rich vein of storytelling in the decades following our detonation of the atom bomb over Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Some of these narratives embrace fantasy, like the first man-in-a-suit Godzilla film, which incarnated fear of the bomb in a 165-foot reptilian monster whose rampage kills children and adults alike. An unstoppable force whose appearance is linked in this and many other later installments to the provocative detonation of nuclear weapons. Anime provides another strain of responses to weapons of mass destruction. Before automated drones could begin raining down hellfire in the 21st century, the short-lived but influential Mobile Suit Gundam Wing series of the mid-90s considered the dubious ethics of training 15-year-olds to remotely pilot enormous battle suits from a great distance instead of placing their own lives and honor on the line in close combat. Katsuhiro Otomo's Akira transforms the threat of nuclear annihilation into impossible-to-control psychic abilities wielded by teenagers powerful enough to destroy an entire metropolis. A bit of creative fabrication which, though far-fetched, does point the finger at the real source of any large-scale conflict, the human mind. Weapons don't pull their own triggers, at least not yet. When triggers depress, levers are pulled, and buttons do click, the chaos they set in motion doesn't discriminate between vulnerable youth and the short-sighted adults who chose violence. Akira Kurosawa's Ikiru, To Live, ostensibly focuses on a middle-aged, terminally ill office worker whose cancer diagnosis prompts immediate reevaluation of his priorities and launches him on a journey of self-discovery. But equally important to the story, though far less visible, are the working-class kids he ultimately chooses to assist. Those Japanese children not killed by either the incendiary bombing campaign of January 1945, which caused firestorms by dropping cylinders of napalm onto dry buildings made of wood and paper, or the atom bombs, which followed, were left to struggle with limited assistance from their elders. Ikiru makes it clear that the intervention performed by the dying Kanji Watanabe to help a local group of children is an aberration, the kind of kindness which bureaucrats mired in paperwork during Reconstruction had little time or willingness to address. If a child's caregiver did survive, then the girl or boy might find at home enough food to survive, but replacing flattened schools, businesses, and government buildings proceeded slowly under a U.S. occupation that initially sought to dismantle both Japanese businesses and the country's central government. Children without nearby family to care for them could not turn for help to either educators or local government officials and were forced to survive by their wits, if at all. This is the fractured landscape into which Studio Ghibli places the central characters in its second film, Grave of the Fireflies, an agonizing examination of the suffering experienced by innocents in wartime. Isao Takahata's film may be animated and may contain the sort of cute visuals and glee-filled frolics that fans would later come to expect in Ghibli fare like Kiki's Delivery Service and Howl's Moving Castle, but here, these elements only sharpen the film's pathos, providing a searing critique of those devastating adult conflicts that never weigh heavily enough the consequences to children. Having discovered that they cannot rely on anyone besides themselves for either physical or emotional support, 14-year-old Sita and 4-year-old Setsuko make do with what they can scavenge and the very real delight they find in one another's company. Committed to hiding the severity of their situation from his little sister, Sita deceives her about the fate of a parent, diverts her from rotting bodies barely hidden under mats of straw, draws her out of the sadness that repeatedly finds her with simple pleasures tied to dwindling supplies and found objects, and introduces her to the lightning bugs that pierce the night's shadows. What do you think about this deeply moving story? Do you think the visual style appropriate given the subject matter? Is the tale's admixture of sorrow and laughter jarring or poignant? Is lying sometimes an effective way to love someone? Or should Sita have been more honest with his sister from the very beginning? And do we need more realistic, sobering tales about human suffering to be rendered in hand-drawn cell animation like this? Or should we continue the rush towards computer-generated, light-hearted fantasy fare, a rush that has been increasing in speed over the last few decades?